Week 5 of college football could be the best one yet, and that's saying something. Consider the first 4 weeks of what we've seen. This is going to be incredible. We have a lot of games to get to, so let's dive right into it. Thursday and Friday games, there's only 4, but there are 4 really good games. Army and ECU. ECU is a 5.5-point favorite. It looks like Army is going back to Dwayne Coleman. He played last game against North Texas, and maybe they are going with 2 quarterbacks, but Dwayne Coleman appears to be the guy once again. ECU is coming off a tough loss. BYU pretty much took care of business and was the better team. It was very obvious. But now this is a team that is looking to get back on track. The BYU game was always going to be, the BYU and the NC State games were always going to be kind of bonus games, if you will. And if they won those games, great. If not, everything's still in front of them. This is a Pirates team that can still very much win the American. And this is a big test for them. Playing disciplined on defense against that triple option attack and completing some more passes than they did against BYU. They were very sloppy at times. The defense was kind of bending but not breaking until everything kind of just fell apart. So this is a game where they need to get right. They need to bounce back, and it's a great opportunity against a solid football team. Florida State at Virginia. Florida State is a 7.5-point favorite. This one could be extremely fun. Virginia is playing with a ton of confidence. They are playing with a different type of attitude that we haven't seen from them in quite some time. Chandler Morris has been really good for Virginia so far, over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. Trell Harris, 321 yards, averaging 17.8 yards per catch. This offense has the talent to be really exciting, but they are up against what is going to be a very tough Florida State defense. They are going to have their hands full, and Florida State is also riding high. They are playing with a different type of attitude that we did not see last year. Tommy Castellanos is a big reason why. The wide receivers have stepped up in a big way, and this defense, man, this defense is something else. We saw it against Alabama, and there are so many guys up front that are making that happen. It's so much fun to watch this team. Now, I do think that I didn't pick the first game, but I think ECU does take care of business. But this one, I do believe that Florida State should be able to handle Virginia. They should be able to slow down that offense, but we have seen weirder things. And just because they beat Alabama doesn't mean that they can't slip up. Again, I do think Florida State is going to win this game, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see some crazy things. Through 4 weeks, we've seen a lot of weird things happen, and nobody appears to be safe. Virginia is playing with a different level of confidence, and if they're in this game for longer than they should be, they'll feel like they have a chance to actually win it. TCU at Arizona State. Arizona State is a 2.5-point favorite, and both teams are playing really well right now. And I think that TCU has played well almost the entire season. Arizona State's had its struggles, but they appear to have kind of figured things out after a win over Baylor. TCU's offense is electric. Josh Hoover is having one of the best seasons in college football. He is one of the best quarterbacks in college football, and yet I don't think a lot of people are talking about him. Through 3 games, he's overthrown for 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns to just 2 interceptions. He is someone that is so much fun to watch. If you have not watched Josh Hoover, I highly recommend it. The kid is an underrated talent who does not get the recognition that he deserves, and he is someone that's really electric with a football in his hands. Now, it helps that he has certain talented players that are going to be able to help him out. Eric McAllister is the big time target. 13 catches for 320 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, most of that came from last week against SMU, but that is what he is capable of doing. Didn't get 1,000 yards last year. He's hoping to break that mark in 2025, and TCU will be in good hands if he's able to do that. Now, you had a number of other players step up in the meantime. Joseph Manjack, who is the most basic player in terms of what he wears on a Saturday. There's no visor, no gloves, no shooting sleeve, no armbands. If you have not checked out Joseph Manjack, the kid is just different. And it'd be one thing if he was dropping passes, but this kid has sticky hands and he's not wearing gloves. That's a really fun thing to watch for TCU. Just a very different thing that you don't see as much anymore. And he is another weapon for Josh Hoover to hit downfield. And that's just kind of the beginning. This is an offense that has done a lot of good things so far this year, an offense that has been explosive and given teams plenty to worry about. TCU is one of those teams that I don't think we know enough about right now because of they've only played 3 games. The big ones are obviously against North Carolina and SMU, and I think that we are just going to get an idea of how good they can actually be in this game. It's going to be a tough test. This is going to be a challenge. This is a defense that can very much slow down this offense in Arizona State's, and TCU is going to have their hands full. Now they're going to have balance. You need to find a way to balance out this offense, run the football, and find ways to move the ball downfield. If you're able to do that, keep Josh Hoover upright, keep him comfortable against this Arizona State defense, you're going to be in good hands. If you're able to do that, you're going to move the ball down the field, and you should feel pretty good. The passing attack is going to be fine. The rushing attack is where you maybe have more questions. However, you have a three-headed, I won't call it a monster, but you have a three-pronged attack, if you will, at running back. Kavorian Barnes, Jeremy Payne, Trent Battle, they have been pretty good so far this year, and that's going to help them tremendously. It's going to be tough to run the ball against Arizona State. They have so many players coming back, and it'll be fun to see how the battles in the trenches play out. And Arizona State is kind of finding their footing. You know, the Mississippi State game was obviously disappointing, and if you are Arizona State, you have to obviously figure out what went wrong there and move on from it. And they've done that so far. They have done a good job of moving on from a tough loss, because sometimes you let one loss turn into 2, and Arizona State basically put their foot down and said no more. Now that has to do a lot with having a veteran roster, a veteran 2 deep that has been to the college football playoff, and an offense led by Sam Leavitt, who gives you that element of, we are going to stop the bleeding right now, and we're going to figure this out. Now, Sam Leavitt has not had the best season. However, he has managed to be a solid player for them, to be relatively consistent outside of that Mississippi State game. And a big reason for that is Jordan Tyson. You're hoping that you can find a couple other guys to step up in a big way. When you look at the stats right now, Jordan Tyson, 31 catches for 357 yards, 5 touchdowns. The next top pass catcher, Shimon Mateer, 13 catches for 135 yards, 1 touchdown. He is the only other player with over 100 yards receiving. Jordan Tyson right now is option 1, 2, and 3, and that has to change. That has to really grow. That has to be better if you are Arizona State, because you can't rely on Jordan Tyson to always make those plays. Now, the rushing attack has some versatility because Leavitt's part of it. Raleek Brown's emergence has been really nice. Kanye Udo has been solid, but not the bell cow that maybe we expected, or some expected, I should say. He's been good, but not what you really need him to be, because you have so many guys and you really don't have a Cam Scatterbo coming back. So you knew that it's going to be a rotation, and it's been fun so far. Raleek Brown's emergence, though, has been really fun. His speed, his quickness, his explosiveness. You've already seen him hurdle a guy in the middle of the field, and that's the type of playmaking that you expected from him. That's a reason why you brought him in to be a running back at Arizona State. We didn't get to see that a ton last year, but now you do, and that's a really fun experience if you have not experienced that. And TCU is going to have its hands full. TCU's defense is full of really exciting talent. And again, I like TCU's defensive line going up against what is a pretty solid Arizona State offensive line. I think that they are going to be really fun to watch. And again, the battle in the trenches is going to dictate a lot of what will happen in this game. And there are plenty of underrated, talented players on defense that are going to be fun to watch. Keyshawn Elliott for Arizona State is a big one there. If he is able to play at the level that he's continued to play at, he's going to be a problem for TCU. He's going to be a problem for Josh Hoover. And it'll be fun to watch these two staffs go back and forth. This one could be a sneaky good game. It's going to be probably the headliner of the Friday night games, which is Florida State, Virginia, TCU, Arizona State, and Houston, Oregon State. I think that right now, if TCU gets off to a good start in this one, if TCU finds ways to be explosive and does what it did against SMU, Arizona State's in trouble. They are not capable right now of playing at that pace. Now, if Arizona State plays how they've played, against Baylor, then you feel like this is a pretty good opportunity for this team. Also, playing tonight at Arizona State is going to be tough. TCU has not faced that type of a challenge, and that could be a big one. And if the pace is slow, you have to find ways to be efficient. You cannot turn the ball over. You have to finish drives. That's why right now, I'd say I lean Arizona State. I believe that they're a team that is still very dangerous in the Big 12. And if TCU can get off to a hot start, if Josh Hoover looks really good, then I would go with TCU. But right now, I'd probably say that I'm leaning with Arizona State just because of what I've seen from them in the past. They know how to play in these big games, and TCU right now it needs to prove it. And if they can, great. I really like Josh Hoover. I really like what this passing attack could be. But right now, there are some questions that still haven't been answered, which is why you lean with the Sun Devils right now. Last game of Friday night is Houston at Oregon State. Houston is a 12.5-point favorite, and this is a game that when we started the season, we thought this one might be single digits, might be a closer game. Oregon State is off to a horrendous start. This has not been a good football team, and it's been kind of tough to watch. And Houston is obviously on a different path. They are on a very different path than Oregon State, and that's really good if you're a Houston fan. And right now, they're playing with a ton of confidence. Connor Wegman looks fairly solid. Dean Connors is a solid weapon as a runner, as a pass catcher. The defense is playing with a ton of excitement, a ton of explosiveness, and they are a problem. If they continue doing what they're doing, they should have no problem winning this game. I just really hope that they have a plan for slowing down Anthony Hankerson. Right now, teams have slowed down Oregon State's rushing attack, and they basically dared Malik Murphy to beat them with his arm. And sometimes he's had that success, but sometimes he's struggled. And Houston is a team that's playing with a ton of confidence and should have a good game plan in store for the Beavers this weekend. And that's why I'm going to go with Houston to win this game. Then we get into Saturday, the morning slate. We start with Georgia Tech at Wake Forest. Georgia Tech is a 14.5-point favorite. And right now, this is a team playing with a ton of confidence. You look at the win against Clemson, the win against Colorado, Haynes King's performance in both of those games. This is a team playing like they belong in the top of the ACC conversation. They are maybe even talking about the college football playoff. Going to Wake Forest brings a little bit of a different challenge, not because Wake Forest is like Clemson, but because it's a different environment. And Wake Forest honestly can give you a little bit of trouble. You no longer have to worry about that unique offense, but Jake Dicker's team will give you some trouble if you're not careful. I think Robbie Ashford is a solid player for this Demon Deacons offense, but we've yet to see him be consistent enough where you're really worried about him for an entire game. Demon Claiborne is obviously the big name to know. Georgia Tech is going to have to figure out how do they keep him at bay. Injuries have kind of kept him off the field at times this year so far, but when he's on, as you can see, he's averaging nearly 10 yards per carry. That's how explosive he can be. I do think Georgia Tech wins this game, but this one could be a potential thrilling game. If it's a slow pace, Georgia Tech should have no problem being efficient. But if they're able to pick it up, if Wake Forest is able to pick it up a little bit, get some explosive plays, then this one has the potential to be super entertaining. Another big one on Saturday. USC at Illinois. Illinois is coming off of that disappointing blowout loss to Indiana. USC just survived Michigan State a little bit, kind of pulled away at the end. But these are two teams that when we came into the season, you thought these could be two potential contenders in the Big Ten. And it feels like, the wind in Illinois' sails is gone, but USC is still very much in that conversation. USC is still very much competing for right now. I think that the 4th spot with Indiana, you can make an argument that they're 5th, but this is a team with a ton of excitement. And Illinois is kind of taking a little bit of a beating last week. They lost a couple players to injury. They just lost one of their Big Ten players on defense for pretty much the entire season. He might be back at the end of the year, but USC is going to, I should say, they were going to give them trouble regardless of the health of this defense. Now that you have some guys maybe a little bit banged up, that could make this really dangerous. USC is a 7-point favorite, like I said, and the offense is going to give Illinois a lot of trouble. And they just faced one of the better passing attacks from Indiana. Now they're going to get another one, arguably one that's better than Indiana's, when Jaden Maeva and this passing attack come to town. Now, Jaden Maeva is having a really good season. There's a reason why Lincoln Riley did not go into the transfer portal and bring a quarterback in. He felt confident in what Jaden Maeva could do. They let Miller Moss walk, and Maeva clearly was the guy for the job. Nearly 71% completion percentage, over 1,200 yards passing, 9 touchdowns. He has yet to throw an interception. Hopefully I didn't just jinx him with that, but he's playing with that type of confidence, and that's a big surprise. Not that we didn't think that Jaden Maeva was talented, but we did have some questions about, can he take his game to the next level? Now, one of the nice things for him is you have arguably the best duo in college football, or at least have a strong argument for that, in Jacoby Lane and Makai Lemon. Jacoby Lane continues to make ridiculous catches against smaller DBs. He continues to be a deep threat for this offense, and he's rising up NFL draft boards. Makai Lemon is more of that short to intermediate guy that's going to be a yards after catch guy. 24 catches for 438 yards, 18.3 yards per catch, and 3 touchdowns. He's just a smooth mover. You don't have to really waste any motion when you watch it. He doesn't waste any motion when he's running. Those two are a problem just by themselves. And then Waymon Jordan is also emerging as a running back. He's averaging 7.3 yards per carry. And teams that are having to worry about this passing attack are just getting destroyed by this USC rushing attack. Now, the offensive line deserves a lot of credit for that as well. But Waymon Jordan appears to be that downhill runner that we haven't really seen at USC in quite some time. And it's been nice to watch him run in the trenches and break tackles and also find space and break off big runs. That is going to give Illinois quite a bit of trouble. And if you're USC, you want to kind of replicate what Indiana did. You want to be physical and balanced on offense. You want to be extremely disruptive on defense. And they almost have a similar personnel to Indiana on both sides of the ball. You have a tandem at wide receiver that is going to give Illinois plenty of trouble. You have a quarterback that's playing with a ton of confidence. You have a defensive line that has been extremely disruptive this year. And if you're able to continue doing that against Illinois, this game is going to be over really quick. Now, if you're Illinois, this game's at home. You don't have to go on the road. You're hosting USC. USC has to adapt to the time change. They have to play in an environment that maybe they haven't seen before, and that could be a challenge as well. I think also last week was just so surprising, and it was really unfortunate, obviously, if you're Illinois, to lose by that much, but I do think they bounce back. I think that they're capable of figuring out what went wrong and find ways to not let that happen again. And they're almost lucky. I wouldn't say lucky. They're fortunate that it did not get worse. Part of that was because Luke Altmaier takes care of the football. He doesn't make bad decisions. And even though he was getting swarmed, he didn't panic. He wasn't making poor decisions. He wasn't just throwing the ball to get rid of it. He was obviously taking a lot of sacks, but he was still calm and making the decision that he could make. Now, it's going to be tough if his offensive line can't live up to the hype, can't live up to the expectations, because this is a USC defensive line that can give them just as many problems as Indiana. And if that happens again, this is going to be another blowout loss. And Illinois is not a team that, honestly, the blowout loss was so surprising because we knew that they were better than that. And you knew that this is a team that can bounce back and can be resilient. You look at the Duke game. Duke was, I don't want to say dominating, but giving Illinois plenty of problems. And they just kept chipping away. They kept staying the course, and they took advantage of mistakes. Now, Indiana didn't make mistakes, which is why Illinois didn't really stand a chance. But if USC makes those similar mistakes, that's where Illinois can kind of pounce. They can capitalize on that. It's just whether or not they're going to make those mistakes. You kind of have to lick your wounds. Hopefully, some of these guys that are banged up can get back on track and can get back healthy, because this is a team that desperately needs a bounce back game. And I'm going to go with USC. I think that Illinois is in a tough spot right now. I think that USC is playing with a ton of confidence. The offense is not unstoppable, but they are extremely explosive. They have a lot of different weapons that Illinois has to defend. And I just don't think that the Illini have the offense to be able to keep up with USC right now. Notre Dame at Arkansas. Notre Dame is a 5.5-point favorite. They just got their first win of the season last week against Purdue, a very improved Purdue team, but still a Purdue team that is not very good. A team in Purdue that still has plenty of roster deficiencies that Notre Dame took advantage of. Notre Dame, though, is a team that, even though they're 1-2, they're much better than the record indicates. That's a team that just lost to Texas A&M by 1. That was a tough loss. You also lost to Miami by a single score. And so you're looking at a team that might be a little bit deceiving if you purely just look at the box score. If you just look at their record, you're going to think much differently than if you actually watch the games. Now, CJ Carr is going to have a good game against Arkansas. Not because the defense can't stop Arkansas's offense. Now, the Razorbacks offense is tremendous. Taylor Green is an absolute beast, and stopping him is not exactly easy. However, he needs to have a good game in this one, because long-term, what it means. We need to see the development in him. And so far, I think that he's looked fairly solid. I think that he's going to be a good quarterback, but you need to see those steps, right? He doesn't have to have this breakout game, but you do need to keep seeing the steps that he's taking. And that's what he needs to do. He needs to be able to keep making those smart decisions, because he has so much talent at wide receiver and tight end that we haven't really seen enough of it yet. We haven't seen Notre Dame have that breakout game that we know they're capable of. Now, part of it has been play calling at times, but this is an offense that should be better than it is, plain and simple. And I think that Notre Dame fans would agree with that. They're a solid team, but I think that there's a level that they can reach that they haven't yet. CJ Carr is going to play a huge role in that. And you have so much talent around him. Look at the running back position, for example. Jeremiah Love. I don't think anybody's been impressed with Jeremiah Love's production so far. We know that he's capable of producing, but it just hasn't been that yet. Jadarian Price has looked better production-wise than Jeremiah Love. But we know that Jeremiah Love is explosive. We know what he's capable of doing. We just haven't seen it yet. And that's hard. That's hard when you're a Notre Dame fan watching, because you know that this team is capable of so much more. And here you are sitting with 2 losses early in the season. But there's plenty of season left. And this is a team that, believe it or not, can still make the college football playoff. College football right now is so much fun because you don't know what's going to happen. There are so many teams that can compete with the best of the best. And for those watching this sport, you look at Miami and you think that is a team that can win a national championship. Well, Notre Dame only lost to them by 3. That's a team that can compete. That's a team that can play. Now, they do have to take care of business. They have to find ways to get to that point where they can have an opportunity to compete. And that starts with the quarterback, and it's also going to rely on a defense going against an offense that to me is really explosive, but I think that people are still underrating this Arkansas offense. And if you're Notre Dame, you need to step up in a big way. Taylor Green has shown time and time again that he can tear apart a defense, that he can dominate when called upon. His experience in Bobby Petrino's system has yielded great dividends. And as long as they take care of the football, this is an offense that's going to be a problem. And Notre Dame knows that. Notre Dame, obviously, you want to see everybody healthy on this defense. You want to find guys that are going to be able to contain Taylor Green, and you're going to want to find ways to be disruptive. You have guys that can get to Taylor Green, but Green's mobility is going to put a lot of stress on this defense. And right now, it's like the Taylor Green show and a bunch of supporting characters. Now, there are guys that are going to be tough to stop. Mike Washington Jr. is very physical running the football. He's very tough to tackle. He is a good complement to what Taylor Green wants to do offensively. If you can name an Arkansas wide receiver as a casual college football fan, more power to you. That is a tough assignment, if you will, but that doesn't mean that they can't make plays. That does not mean that they can't tear apart a defense. And with the injuries that we've seen so far this year to Notre Dame's secondary, we've seen opportunities for teams to expose that defense. And for the most part, it hasn't happened, but there are instances that Bobby Petrino is going to watch and see, hey, these are the guys that we can target. You look at what Malachi Toney did to this defense in the slot. That is something that I guarantee you Bobby Petrino is trying to figure out, how do we get that and how do we expose that avenue there. Omega Blake is going to make your life tough on the outside, but Notre Dame has two good corners that should be able to compete with him. I think the big challenge for Notre Dame and the area where I think Arkansas is going to utilize him is Rohan Jones. You look at what they did last week against Memphis, they used him in a lot of different ways. And Bobby Petrino is going to try to find ways to get him the football and see what he can do. And especially against this Notre Dame defense, which had some issues in the slot and maybe with the tight end position a little bit too, that maybe is a potential avenue for Arkansas to explore. Taylor Green needs help, plain and simple. He has guys that are capable of making plays. And this is an offense that just has to get out of its own way, honestly. The turnovers have been killer. The reason why they've lost 2 games is because of turnovers. And part of that's on Taylor Green. He threw 2 picks last week. There was also the Mike Washington fumble that sealed the game for Memphis. There was also a fumble against Ole Miss as they're driving. So as long as they take care of the football, I think Arkansas can give Notre Dame a run for their money. If they can't take care of the football, Notre Dame's going to take care of business. And right now, it feels like Notre Dame will win this game. The big key here is, especially with Sam Pittman's job on the line, Arkansas has to refocus. They have to dial it back in and think about what is going to be most important. Figure out the basics of it, get back to the fundamentals, and if Notre Dame gets up early, not just cave because things are hard. That is going to be a big key. Early in this game, how much does Arkansas want it? You already have 2 losses. And in the SEC, when you're going to face tougher competition, that is going to be a big thing. Because as soon as they start seeing that, hey, this isn't going our way, they have 2 options. We can fight back and find a way to win this, or they can cave. This is early for, I don't want to call it a quit watch, but Notre Dame's also trying to avoid its 3rd loss of the year. So one of these teams is going to get it. Notre Dame just appears to have maybe more on the table for them. And Arkansas right now is reeling from a tough loss. If they're not going to have a hangover game where they struggle early, then this could be a thrilling matchup. I think this is going to be a really fun one as long as Arkansas stays invested. I mean, I don't want to say that Notre Dame's going to give up. They just don't appear to be that team. Marcus Freeman just doesn't have that as an acceptable avenue. Not saying that Sam Pittman believes that, hey, yeah, we can quit, but the circumstances are a little bit different there. I do think that Notre Dame takes care of business. I do think they win this football game, but I also know that Arkansas is very capable of making Notre Dame's life a lot more difficult than it needs to be, and they are also capable of winning this game. Rutgers at Minnesota. Minnesota is a 4.5-point favorite. They're coming off of a tough loss to Cal. Last year, they also lost to Rutgers in disappointing fashion. And Rutgers is coming off of a disappointing loss as well. They had an opportunity to potentially beat Iowa at home and came up short. This is going to be a super underrated game. Ethan Kaliakmanis returns to Minnesota after transferring from the Gophers to the Scarlet Knights, and he's going to face a guy in Drake Lindsey that's going to try to let Minnesota fans know, hey, we don't need to worry about losing him. And I think Minnesota fans would probably say, yeah, we're okay with Ethan Kaliakmanis leaving, but he's playing really well right now, nearly completing 69% of his passes, over 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns to 1 interception. He's also using his legs a little bit. So this Rutgers offense is in good hands with him as long as he's playing like this. The rushing attack is really good. Antoine Raymond is a name to keep an eye on in this one. Minnesota's going to have to figure out ways to slow him down. This Rutgers offense can be explosive. They're really fun to watch. On defense, Eric O'Neal has been really good for Rutgers coming in from James Madison. He is going to have a really fun matchup against this Minnesota offensive line. Minnesota is going to have their hands full with this Rutgers defensive line, and that's going to be a fun battle to pay attention to. Now, Drake Lindsey has his work cut out for him. This is a guy who's still trying to prove that he can be a leader for this team. He can be the player that Minnesota needs him to be. Now, I'm not sure if Darius Taylor is going to play, but AJ Turner has been solid. The rushing attack has found some depth that they needed, and that's why you brought in certain players. That's why you brought in AJ Turner. That's why you brought in Cam Davis. That's why you brought in guys that are going to give you that depth. This is a big reason why. If Taylor is back, I feel pretty good about what this offense can do, and then it's really going to come down to this defense. I think an underrated matchup this weekend is Rutgers wide receivers against Minnesota's secondary. I think that's good on good there, and it's going to be fun to watch. I do think Minnesota wins this one. You obviously remember what happened last year. Minnesota is a tough team to beat, and it's going to be a close one. I think that 4.5 maybe is a little bit steep, but I do think Minnesota gets the job done at home. You know that that stadium is going to be really loud and really tough to play in. And I think the Gophers do get the job done. Duke at Syracuse. Duke is a 4.5-point favorite coming off a win last week against NC State. The Blue Devils, like I said in that preview video, I think that Duke is still a very tough team to beat. I think they're a dangerous team in the ACC. As long as they are making smart decisions and taking care of the football and making smart reads, they are going to be a problem. This is still a very talented team with a ton of potential. Syracuse is always going through a transition. Steve Angeli is out for the year with the torn Achilles, so everybody turns to Ricky Collins. They're coming off of a big win against Clemson, and now they're have a combination of things that make this a potential hangover game. Are they going to be locked in and focused? Or is Duke just going to take care of business? It all really stems from Ricky Collins and what he can do. And there's a reason why he didn't win the job when Angeli took over. So I think for that reason, I'm going to go with Duke here. I think the Blue Devils are, if they can win this one, this is a team that's going to be focused on being a problem for the rest of the conference slate. And Duke is a team that I think at the end of the season, a lot of people are not going to want to face. Probably not going to be in the ACC contender conversation, but this is a team that is still very dangerous if you're not careful. Louisville at Pitt. Louisville is a 3-point favorite right now. This one, it could be a sneaky tough game. The Cardinals struggled with James Madison a couple weeks ago. Pitt is obviously coming off of, a disappointing loss to West Virginia, and that is, it was always going to be a tough game. And that's an emotional game that was always going to be close. But you feel like there's a little bit of wind that was taken out of their sails from that loss. And that being said, this is a team that's very capable of upsetting the Cardinals. That being said, as well, you have a defense that has plenty of talent, but this Cardinals offense is going to challenge this team. They are going to put them in tough positions, and it's going to be interesting to see which side caves first, which side is going to be able to have more success. I'm going to lean with the Cardinals here. I do think that Louisville gets the job done. As long as Miller Moss is taking care of the football and they find ways to get Isaac Brown the ball, they're going to be in good hands. Cincinnati at Kansas. Kansas is a 6.5-point favorite. Jalen Daniels off to an incredible start. 817 yards, 12 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. I believe last year he threw 14 touchdowns for the entire season. He already has 12. He has looked really good so far. A big reason why I had him in my quarterback power rankings. If you haven't checked that out, make sure you check that video out as well. Plenty of good quarterback play so far this season. Kansas is a fun team. They have a very fun stadium, a stadium that's full of energy, and that's what's going to happen when you unveil a new stadium. But this fan base is hungry for success. Lance Leipold has given it to them, and Cincinnati is walking into a tough situation. Now, I will say Brendan Sorsby is a cool, calm, and collected quarterback that is going to be fun to watch against this Kansas defense. Kansas has struggled at times defensively against really good quarterbacks, and Brendan Sorsby could have a solid game. If he's able to do that, I do think that they're going to keep this one closer, but I do think that Kansas takes care of business. I don't have any concerns about them, especially not at home. UCF at Kansas State. Kansas State is a 6-point favorite, and this season could not have gone worse for the Wildcats. On the flip side, things could not have gone better for UCF. They come off of a big win against North Carolina, a North Carolina team that has not looked good, but UCF is 3-0. Scott Frost has done a good job, and he has his quarterback. Taven Jackson is QB1. I'm not entirely sure why he wasn't QB1 the entire time, but here we are. Taven Jackson has looked really good, and this defense so far has done a good job of keeping teams in check. They do unfortunately face their toughest test yet. Kansas State, despite their struggles, has plenty of talent to make this difficult for UCF. They just have to play consistently. A lot of that hinges on Avery Johnson. Jace Brown gives UCF probably the most difficult wide receiver they've had to cover yet this year. I do think that Kansas State is going to take care of business. I think that they can get a win, and if they get back on track, I don't really know yet, but this would be a good opportunity for them to do that, to beat an undefeated team, to get kind of that fan base back into it and show that, hey, this is not going to be a disastrous season. South Alabama at North Texas. North Texas is a 12.5-point favorite. I think South Alabama still is a very tough team to beat as long as they can refocus. They're 1-3 right now. North Texas found a way to beat Army last week, undefeated. They are playing with a ton of confidence. South Alabama, though, is an underrated team. I think that they're still a solid team. They can give teams a lot of trouble, but they might have a tough time covering this North Texas offense. North Texas is extremely explosive, extremely good at what they do. Drew Mestemakers having a great year, over 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. And for that reason, I do think that North Texas takes care of business. Unless South Alabama shows me something else, I think that this one is going to be a pretty wide margin for North Texas. Georgia Southern at James Madison. This is an underrated game. If you are excited for Sun Belt action, this is one for you. Now, Georgia Southern season hasn't gone off to the greatest start, but they are still very much a tough team. They're an extremely talented team that I think is just trying to find its footing. And even though they're 16.5-point underdogs, they are very capable of pulling off an upset. They just have to put some things together and kind of limit some of the mistakes that you've seen in previous games. The Fresno State game was horrendous, and hopefully they've found a way to bounce back, especially against James Madison. That is going to be tough. Now, JMU is still in contention to be the group of 5 candidate for the college football playoff, but it's a lot tougher now. You lost 28-14 to Louisville. You had opportunities to win that game and you just didn't come through. You had a big win over Liberty last week where you took care of business, kind of took control of that game, and James Madison has everything in front of them. Now, winning out is going to be the easiest way to put yourself in that conversation, and it'll be fun to see how they're able to do that, how they're able to make that happen. This is a very good team, a very talented team, and Georgia Southern is going to have their hands full. That being said, Georgia Southern is still an underrated team. Then we get into the afternoon slate, and we have a big one right off the bat. Ohio State at Washington. Ohio State is an 8.5-point favorite, and the Buckeyes are looking to send a message here. Washington is playing with a ton of confidence, and the Buckeyes are looking to say, hey, there are levels to this, and we're going to let you know that we are on a different level than you. Washington is looking to pull off an upset. They are looking to show that, hey, we can compete with the best of the best. And this is a program that has an underrated home field advantage. We saw it a couple of years ago against Oregon. This stadium is one of the loudest in college football, one of the most exciting. When they're playing well, their fans are insane. Their fans are so loud, and Ohio State is going to find that out. The easiest way to keep them quiet is by making big plays. And a lot of that hinges on Julian Sayin. Julian Sayin has looked pretty good so far. I think that he is building confidence at every single week. The first game against Texas was always going to be tough. We knew that he was going to struggle. We knew that he was going to need some time. But he did exactly what he needed to do. And in a way, it showed his maturity to say that, hey, I'm not going to get overwhelmed by the moment. The spotlight's not going to be too bright for me. I'm just going to take what the defense gives me. And against a really good Texas defense, he just did what he needed to do. He didn't try to be the hero, and Ohio State found a way to win. Since then, they clearly have not played anybody on the level of Texas. And this is another big opportunity for him to really take his game to another level. Now, it helps when you're throwing to Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate and the rest of those pass catchers, but you're not going to apologize for that. And Julian Sayin has played with a ton of confidence the last couple of games, and this is another big opportunity for him to let the entire country know that this passing attack is good, not just because of the wide receivers catching his passes. He is going to have a massive opportunity to make this a statement game for the Buckeyes and for himself. And this is a Buckeyes team that is looking to go back to back and find ways to win big games. They're also going to have to slow down what is one of the most explosive offenses in college football. How you defend Damon Williams, this is a guy who, if you're not careful, is going to torch you with his arm, with his legs. So far as a passer, he looks extremely confident. How do you slow that down? Ohio State has the guys up front to get hits on him. And Washington State was able to get hits on Williams last week. And I think that Ohio State has a little bit more talent than Washington State. So I think that they're going to have a good idea of how to do that. Matt Patricia is going to have this team dialed in. And if they can do that against Texas, I guarantee you they can do that against Washington. Same thing with the secondary. The secondary can make plays against a guy that has taken some chances. Williams has definitely made some throws, especially last week, where if there were better corners or better safeties, those were turnover-worthy passes. So that is something that Ohio State can do. Also, switching up the looks. They were able to confuse Arch Manning in week 1 because of the different looks they were giving. And if you're able to do that against a shorter quarterback, that's going to make your life a lot easier. And Ohio State definitely has the ability to control this game. They have the talent, they have the experience, and this shouldn't be too much of a challenge to walk into this environment. Yes, it's going to be loud, and that could affect them a little bit, but if there's a team that's prepared and equipped to make this happen, to walk into a hostile environment, it's Ryan Day's team. Now, on the other side, Jedd Fisch has to figure out a way to pull off an upset here. And playing at home is going to help that quite a bit. You look at last week, we saw even Texas Tech and Utah. Now, if Utah had better quarterback play, that one probably is a little bit closer. But that environment was incredible. And Washington is going to have a similar environment. These fans are going to be excited. An opportunity to knock off the top team in the country is a great experience for the fan base, and they're going to be loud. You just have to find ways as the underdog to keep this one close, to show that, hey, we can compete with the best of the best. Now it starts with your quarterback. How do you get him in space? How do you get him comfortable in the pocket? You have plenty of talent downfield. Someone like Denzel Boston has to have a big game, and he's going up against really talented players in that secondary. How do you make sure that Caleb Downs doesn't have an impact? How do you make sure that you don't throw it in his vicinity too much or loft it up too high where he can go up and get it? Those are going to be things that Williams has to do. You also have to find balance. Jonah Coleman's going to provide that. 347 yards and 9 touchdowns already. He also has 8 catches for 150 yards and 1 more score. He is a tremendous talent for this team, and you have to find ways to get him involved. Now, if you are Washington's defense, I'm really excited to watch this matchup of Ohio State's wide receivers against Washington's defensive backs. You have 2 massive corners for Washington going up against 2 of the better receivers in college football. You brought in Takario Davis for a reason. You have Ephesians Parizak coming back. Both of them are going to be physical. Both of them are going to be able to handle the size of Jeremiah Smith. They're going to be able to handle Carnell Tate. But can they be consistent? Can they be disciplined? Because Ohio State is going to dial things up to make sure that they're paying attention to the game plan, to the play call. And that is a potential opportunity for Washington to swing things in their favor. It's going to be tough. There's a reason why Ohio State's an 8.5 point favorite right now. It's going to be tough to win this game. But if you are this team, you have to find ways to create turnovers, to create different looks. And just like Ohio State's going to try to do to Damon Williams, you can bet that Washington is going to try to do the same to Julian Saint. I do love this environment. I do really like this team. I think people are sleeping on this team. It's a massive opportunity for them this weekend, but I do think that the Buckeyes are going to take care of business. College football has been a little bit strange, but certain teams have been steady. The Buckeyes are one of them, and I do think that they come in to Washington and take care of business on Saturday. LSU at Ole Miss. Ole Miss is a 2.5 point favorite, and right now, technically, sits at the top of the SEC because they played 2 conference games so far. LSU is right behind them. This is going to be an interesting one. LSU has had its struggles, but also has had its signs of success. The offense has to get things going. Garrett Nussmeier has to find some rhythm with his receivers. They have to find some explosive plays. They saw that last week against Southeast Louisiana, but for the most part, there have been some inconsistencies. The defense is in a great spot. The defense is playing really well, and they're going against an Ole Miss offense that has a ton of confidence as well. How do you slow them down? Now, Trinidad Chambliss has been a really fun emergence for Ole Miss. There's a reason why he went out and got him, and it helps because Austin Simmons is down with an injury. So how do you get him comfortable in this new experience? You're playing against a defense that is probably the best, not probably, it is the best defense that Trinidad Chambliss has ever seen in his life. That is going to be a challenge. And how does Lane Kiffin dial up plays to get him in a comfort zone where he can make those plays? That's going to be really fun to watch. This is a fun matchup. I think that LSU is going to take care of business. If Garrett Nussmeier and this offense find whatever it is that they're missing, this is going to be tough. Ole Miss has been really fun. They've been really explosive, but I think that comes to an end. That run of excitement comes to an end. I do think that LSU is going to take care of business. Auburn at Texas A&M. Texas A&M is a 6.5 point favorite. To me, that feels kind of high. I think Auburn's loss to Oklahoma was disappointing, but I don't think that they lose any confidence. I don't think that they lose any belief that they can still win football games, that they can win in the SEC. Jackson Arnold clearly has been unaffected despite the fact that Oklahoma's defense was swarming him every single play. And that was really tough if you are a fan of the Auburn Tigers, but you also know that things can get better. You also know that things are still on the table, and this team could make a run at the SEC championship. In their way is a Texas A&M team that is going to be tough to stop, and so far they are playing with a ton of confidence. They have the ability to make plays. Marcel Reed's playing really well so far, 869 yards and 9 touchdowns. The one thing I'll say is that Auburn's defense, if they're able to step up and play like they did against Oklahoma and so far this year, this is going to be a tough team to beat. This is a tough team to run on, a tough team to move the ball on defensively. And while Texas A&M does have explosive players, Mario Craver has kind of carried the team for a little bit outside of Marcel Reed. And if Auburn finds a way to slow him down, they might have something there. This is a tough road game. Going to Texas A&M, if this was in Auburn, I would pick Auburn to win this game. I do think that the Tigers are very capable of winning this one. I you know what? We'll go with Auburn. I do think that Auburn is going to get the job done. They're going to be physical, and Texas A&M is good, but they are not without flaws. Indiana at Iowa. Indiana is a 7.5-point favorite. Iowa is coming off a win over Rutgers. Indiana absolutely just destroyed Illinois. And I think that Illinois is a team that wasn't ready for the moment. And I don't really think that Iowa is going to be quite ready for that either. Now, it is at Iowa, and weird things have happened in that stadium before, but Indiana feels like it's on a different level. Fernando Mendoza and that passing attack look really good right now, and Iowa just doesn't have the firepower to keep up in that one. Indiana is going to win, and it might be just as bad as that Illinois win that they just had. Cal at Boston College. Cal had a tough game against San Diego State last week. Now they have to travel across the country to play Boston College. Boston College had a similar experience going across the country to play Stanford. They came away with a loss. This might be the same thing here. I do like Boston College to win this game. Cal just has to regroup. I think their young quarterback, Sego Palutale, is going to be just fine, but he had a rough stretch against San Diego State, and this is a much better Boston College team than that Aztecs team. I think that the Eagles do get the job done. Baylor at Oklahoma State. Baylor is a 20.5-point favorite. The Bears are coming off a disappointing loss to Arizona State. And again, this offense has the talent to be able to beat anyone. I think this is a get-right game where they take it to the Oklahoma State Cowboys. And at this point, we're just waiting to see if Oklahoma State is going to fire Mike Gundy. If Baylor has a good enough performance, that might get the job done. Utah at West Virginia. Utah's coming off that disappointing loss to Texas Tech, but they're 10.5-point favorites on the road. West Virginia is playing as expected, I think, is what we can say. And this is an underrated game. If Devin Dampier and that offense can't figure things out, West Virginia is definitely capable of pulling off an upset. And right now, if you're Utah, you have to wonder, are we reeling right now, and how do we bounce back? Because last year, this was a team that would lose a game, and then you all of a sudden had a new fear that, okay, well, we might lose the next game as well. That's a big key for this team. How do you kind of stop the bleeding and make sure that one loss doesn't turn into two? I do think that the Utes take care of business. I don't really have a ton of confidence in West Virginia right now, and I think Utah is a much better team, and they get the job done. UConn at Buffalo. UConn is a 3-point favorite coming off of an interesting start to the year. Same thing with Buffalo. Both of them have been kind of disappointing. Buffalo is very capable of winning this game. I'm going to go with UConn, though. I think that UConn is going to be too much for Buffalo's defense, but Buffalo's defense does have quite a bit of talent that's going to be able to make life a little bit more challenging than maybe UConn expected. San Diego State coming off that big win over Cal, going to Northern Illinois, a team very capable of pulling up an upset. Sean Lewis's team, though, I think gets the job done, though. I think that San Diego State's playing with a ton of confidence. They're a lot better than people realize. And even though this is a tough road game, they're going to get this win. Rice at Navy. Navy is a 14.5-point favorite. Rice runs that unique offense, but unfortunately for them, Navy also runs a unique offense that their defense faces every single week in practice. So discipline shouldn't be a problem. The midshipmen are going to win this one, in my opinion. They're going to take care of business, and Rice is better, but I should say they're better this year, but it's going to be tough to beat a midshipman team that is playing with a ton of confidence. Finishing out the rest of the afternoon slate, there are so many games. Again, I told you week 5 is going to be incredible. Tulane at Tulsa. Tulane is a 14-point favorite, and while Tulsa just beat Oklahoma State, Tulane is going to take care of business. Don't really have any concerns about this team winning this football game. Tennessee at Mississippi State. Tennessee is a 7.5-point favorite, and this is an interesting game. I think that this is an underrated game that not a lot of people are talking about. Mississippi State is still undefeated, which is a weird statement to say. It's also weird that they're undefeated and Tennessee has one loss, but that's also just who you play, right? So Tennessee has a lot of problems that they'll give to Mississippi State. They present a lot of challenges that Mississippi State has not seen yet. And this is an offense that if they're firing on all cylinders, Mississippi State doesn't stand a chance. They do not have a chance in this game, and Tennessee is going to take care of business if that happens. Joey Aguilar has looked really good for Tennessee. Over 1,100 yards, 12 touchdowns. Chris Brazzell II has been his favorite target. 426 yards, averaging 17 yards per catch and 6 touchdowns. Tennessee is obviously still thinking about the Georgia loss and how they came up short and how they had an opportunity to win that game. That is good. I think that's good for a team to have early in the season because you know that there is a lot that needs to go into winning football games. You know that in order to be successful, you have to be disciplined. You have to take everyone seriously, and you have to make sure that you're in the right position to win games and be disciplined when you need to. And they've learned a hard lesson. They learned that certain things need to happen for you to beat a team like Georgia. And not that Mississippi State is on that level because they're not, but winning a game like this on the road, which Arizona State's already found out how tough it can be if you let Mississippi State hang around in a game. If Tennessee does the same, it's going to be a long day. It's going to be a tough game for this team to win. However, Tennessee appears to be a team very capable of making this a business trip and not getting caught up in the cowbells, the environment, taking care of business. And part of that's going to be on the offense, but part of it is going to be on a defense to face this Mississippi State offense that's playing with a lot more confidence than we expected at this point in the season. Tennessee's shown that they can be disruptive. They can be disruptive. They can make explosive plays happen. They can create turnovers. They had a number of plays against Georgia where they nearly turned the ball over, and that would have changed things a ton. They just didn't get the job done at times, but they're capable of creating turnovers. They did so against Georgia. They've done that against other teams this year. Turnovers are going to be the quickest way for this team to turn momentum heavily in their favor, and they're 7.5-point favorites. This game can be a blowout. Tennessee is the only team in this game that can make this a blowout. Mississippi State is trying to figure out how do we hang around long enough in this game where Tennessee gets in their own way. That is going to be a big thing. Blake Shapen's playing with a lot of confidence right now. 884 yards, 7 touchdowns. The defense is swarming. Isaac Smith is one of the best players that nobody's really talking about. The safety has made a number of plays for Mississippi State's defense that I don't think a lot of people have seen, and I don't think a lot of people know who he is, especially after last year, is really surprising. Now they're going to have to figure out, how do we defend this offense? This offense is almost gives Tennessee an added point or two just because teams don't see this very often. And Tennessee is very good at running it. And Aguilar is the right quarterback for the job. The Bulldogs just have to find out, do we have the personnel to handle this? How do we stop Chris Brazzell? How do we stop Mike Matthews? How do we stop the number of playmakers that this team possesses? And oh, by the way, how do we keep up with the scoring? How do we prevent their defense from getting to Blake Shapen? Because there's clearly a more talented team, and it's going to be tough, but Mississippi State has done it before. They did it against Arizona State. So it's not like they don't know the formula, but this might be a way tougher test to do it against Tennessee than to do it against Arizona State. That's going to be challenging. Now, it will be fun to see how Mississippi State responds to the pace and how quickly they want to go. Jeff Lebby's team likes the pace that they go at, and we've seen them be explosive. But do they want to do that? Do they want to compete with the pace of Tennessee? Because if Tennessee gets going, they really get going. And if you're not prepared for that, if you're not ready for a track meet, you're going to get dusted. You're going to get left behind. And the Volunteers are more than capable of just keeping their foot on the gas. They are not worried about whether or not the team is ready for that. They are going to keep going at 100 miles an hour, and they're going to figure out real quickly if that team can compete or not. If you're Mississippi State, turnovers are going to be a big key. It's how they won against Arizona State. Joey Aguilar is they're very able to make Joey Aguilar's life tough, and they're capable of baiting him into bad decisions. And he's thrown interceptions before. He's made some bad decisions, and they have a blueprint of how to do that. It's just a matter of getting pressure on him and putting him in tough spots where he's too stressed to think clearly and get the ball back. I'm going to go with Tennessee in this one. I do think that even though it's on the road against a Bulldogs team that's playing a lot better, I think the Volunteers get the job done. Arizona at Iowa State. Iowa State is a 6.5-point favorite. Arizona is playing with a ton of confidence right now. They feel really good. They are in a better situation than we thought they would be coming into this one. Iowa State is undefeated, but hasn't looked like a juggernaut by any means. I do think that Iowa State wins this one. Playing in Ames is a lot more difficult than people realize. It'll be fun, though. I think this one will be close. I think Iowa State does get the job done, though. Virginia Tech at NC State. NC State is a 10.5-point favorite. Virginia Tech just played their first game without Brent Pry, come away with a win against an inferior opponent. Now they have their first tough test since that's happened. NC State's playing with a lot of excitement. CJ Bailey's looked like he's taking a step in his development. Still some things he has to iron out, but he's playing a lot better than we expected. Hollywood Smothers has been a solid player for this team. 503 yards, 6.3 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns. I do think the Wolfpack get the job done at home. Virginia Tech, even though they are playing with some confidence from last week, I just don't think that they still have what it takes to win this one. NC State's going to take care of business. Jacksonville State at Southern Miss. Southern Miss is a 4-point favorite, which is weird because when you look at these two teams, Southern Miss just lost to Louisiana Tech last week. They were not favored in that game, and I think a lot of people would say that Jacksonville State is a better team than Louisiana Tech, and somehow Southern Miss is a 4-point favorite. They are at home, so that has something to do with that. Whether or not Southern Miss can stop Jacksonville State's rushing attack is a big question. Gavin Wimsatt has been part of that, but Cam Cook's emergence has been phenomenal. 537 yards and 4 touchdowns. If Southern Miss stops him, they're in business. I do think the Golden Eagles take care of business there. I think that they're able to pull out a win, and they'll get the job done at home. Western Kentucky at Missouri State, a super underrated matchup in Conference USA. Western Kentucky is a 4.5-point favorite. Missouri State is a team that I think a lot of people are sleeping on. I think that they're much better than people give them credit for, but it is tough to stop this passing attack of Western Kentucky. I think the Hilltoppers will take care of business. They'll get the job done. They'll get the win, and it'll still be fun. This one could be a shootout. So if you're a betting person, the over might be a good one to look at there. Memphis at FAU. Memphis is a 13.5-point favorite on the road. They're coming off that big upset win over Arkansas. FAU is just in a tough spot. They're not making smart decisions offensively. Caden Velkamp has really struggled with taking care of the football. If Memphis can create turnovers, I like them to take care of this game pretty easily. And if FAU continues turning the ball over, this one won't even be close. I do like Memphis on the road. I don't know if it's 13.5 is a good number that I like. As long as they can refocus, obviously anybody can get up for Arkansas, but getting up for a road game to FAU, that's another challenge. If they're able to take care of that, though, this is a team that's going to be extremely dangerous in the American. Then finally, we go to the night slate. Oregon at Penn State. This is one of the biggest matchups that we've been waiting for quite some time, and it is finally here. Penn State is a 3.5-point favorite at home, and this one is going to be fun. You have the whiteout, you have the electric atmosphere at Penn State. You have two playoff teams playing against each other with a ton on the line. The stakes could not be higher at this point in the season. These are two teams that have basically just been kind of getting by to this point. At times it's been kind of infuriating because it's like just I think for Penn State at times you felt like maybe let's pick up the pace here. Let's figure this out because this should not be a close game. This should not be the game that it is. And they found ways to pull away, but it's almost like playing with your food kind of thing. Penn State has kind of done that quite a bit, and it is what it is at this point. But they are ready for this opportunity. They know that, or they knew coming into this year, this is the one that they were going to get ready for. And still, it was frustrating to watch at times, but you never felt like Penn State was really in jeopardy of losing games. It's just how vanilla can they be and still get away with it? Oregon, on the other hand, has kind of done a similar approach, but they've also made sure that they took care of business early and often. There's never really been a point where the Ducks have felt threatened, and they have just been kind of running over everybody. And not that they played the best quality of competition, but they have taken care of business. That's the one thing you can say is they have left no doubt about who the better team was and by how much of a margin they're the better team. They are clearly the better team. Dante Moore has been solid. And this is one thing we talked about for Oregon coming into the season is what does Dante Moore do for this offense? How is he capable of making this team better? And so far we've seen the talent in his arm. We've seen that he is a different quarterback than Dylan Gabriel, and he gives this offense different things that we haven't seen before, that we haven't seen from Dylan Gabriel. And that's really exciting. Now, here's the thing. This is his first real big time matchup that he's had since that Utah game a couple of years ago. When he was at UCLA, it was at home, so this is a much different experience. But Utah made him look like he was a 0-star. He was struggling so much. They had multiple turnovers, multiple sacks, and Dante Moore was in a tough spot. If you're Penn State, you're trying to figure out how do we recreate that experience? How do we make it so that he's not comfortable, so that he's second guessing everything that he does and his internal clock is sped up because he's so worried about somebody hitting him. And this is a Penn State defensive line that is more than capable of making that happen. The problem is that they're going against an Oregon offensive line that has just been mauling people. So the one thing that Dante Moore can hang his hat on is that he trusts his offensive line to give him time to throw. And he trusts that Will Stein is going to dial up plays where he's not holding on the ball for a lot of the time. I think early on, you're going to see a lot of quick game. You're going to try to see if Will Stein can get Dante Moore in rhythm and make some of those quicker throws. You're in a hostile environment. You're in a place where this fan base is going to be in this game for pretty much the entire game. They are going to be loud. They are going to be a problem. And any mistakes are just going to encourage them to keep being louder. That's going to be a problem. So the things that they can do early in this game will do a lot for this team's success and for the comfort of Dante Moore to not have to re-experience that Utah game again. If you're Penn State, kind of the same thing. How do you get Drew Aller in rhythm? How do you get him invested in this game? Because you are going to need him to make some big time throws. He needs that confidence. And this is a big one because if Penn State doesn't win this one and Drew Aller doesn't have a game where you feel like he contributed quite a bit, you're going to have questions about this team competing in the Big Ten, but also in the college football playoff. On the flip side, if Drew Aller has that game that we expect from him, and if this team plays well, you're going to feel good about what this team can do. And right now, there are questions. I think everybody that's watched Penn State has questions about, can this team beat a good team? Can they get off to a fast start? And that's where it's like, if you watch the games, they're clearly not opening up the playbook. They're clearly trying to keep it as vanilla as possible. They're trying to make sure that they don't give away some of their plays. And Andy Koltonicki has been, for good reasons, boring with his play calling. I think you're going to see a lot of different looks that Oregon has not seen yet. They do have last year's film, obviously, to go off of. But I think that Andy Koltonicki is going to try to get his offense off to a hot start. Now, kind of like last year, I really hope that he doesn't try to go too far in that direction, because sometimes you need to just keep it simple. Your quarterback needs to be invested. Your quarterback needs to be a big time contributor. And you're not going to do that if you're trying to get too cute with everything. They have so much talent. Sometimes you're just going to have to be like, we're going to give Katron Allen the ball and he's going to run for 7 yards. And then we're going to do that again and again. And then when he's tired, we're going to bring in Nicholas Singleton and we're going to run once again. Now, that's probably not going to happen consistently against Oregon because Oregon's defense is so good. But my point is that Penn State has too much talent to have to resort to being cute and overthink things. You don't have to do that. You have so much talent to utilize. You don't have to overthink it. And I don't think that Andy Koltonicki will. I think he has a full season of seeing, hey, sometimes I got in our way. Sometimes I was trying to do too much. And we just need to go with what's been working. We need to keep it vanilla, if you will. Drew Aller versus Dante Moore is one of the more intriguing quarterback matchups this weekend. It's going to be so fun to see how these two play and how these two handle the spotlight. It's a big game for both of them. And Dante Moore has a lot more to prove than Drew Aller, but Drew Aller also has a lot to prove still. He has a lot to show as a quarterback, and this is his first big matchup of the entire season. We haven't seen him have to be that guy, and maybe he will have to be this in this one. It's a home game for Penn State. If this was in Oregon, I think I'd feel like Oregon can win this game without any question. The fact that it's at Penn State, and I think that right now there are some questions about the Oregon Ducks, I'm going to lean with Penn State here. I think that this is going to be a fun game. Either team could win, and I think that the home field advantage is going to get Penn State where they need to be. Even though they've had some questions in their games, I think that this is going to be a fun opportunity for them to show that, hey, we are a contender and we can win a big game at home. Alabama at Georgia is another massive game. I told you, week 5 is fun. Week 5 has so many games that are going to be really exciting, and Alabama and Georgia is just one of them. Georgia is a 3-point favorite at home, and this is a big one for both sides. You have opportunities for both quarterbacks to make a name for themselves. It seems like deja vu, but we have talked about both of these teams ad nauseum all year. We talked about what Alabama can do to win a big game. We talked about what Georgia can do to win a big game. Georgia comes away with that big win over Tennessee. They found a way to survive on the road. Now they get a big win at home where you're going to see a raucous crowd and you're facing the Alabama Crimson Tide, who, even though they don't have Nick Saban anymore, as Tommy Castellanos likes to point out, this is still a team that is dangerous. This is still a talented team that is suddenly playing with a ton of confidence. After the Florida State loss, you have to give Alabama credit for rediscovering their confidence and rediscovering how to win football games. Now, it does help when you don't play a team like Florida State. You play a bunch of bad football teams, but at least they're doing it against bad football teams. Because if they would have struggled, I don't think this line would be as close as it is. Now, Ty Simpson still has a lot to prove. He still has some things that he needs to do better. And this is an offense that is looking to make a statement. Because when you look at what happened against Florida State, they weren't playing at a level that made you feel confident about this team, that made you worry if you're the opposing team, if you're the opposing defense. And that's a problem. That needs to change. Part of that is Ryan Williams was nowhere to be found. And really, until the Wisconsin game, it was kind of the case. And this is the game that Ryan Williams broke out in last year against Georgia. And we're trying to see if he can be more consistent. So far, Jeremy Bernard has been the only consistent player on this offense. He has been the most reliable player. And last game, we saw Ryan Williams finally get on track to where he needs to be. We saw the 2 explosive plays. Can he do that against Georgia again? Georgia's going to know that, hey, this kid burnt us last year. Kirby Smart knows who he has to worry about. And if they can find ways to take him away, then you're going to be in a good spot. But if you're Alabama, you have to find unique ways to get him involved. You know, the screen pass, the fake reverse or the reverse, double reverse, whatever it ended up being, screen pass to Ryan Williams for a touchdown. Those are great ways to do that. And Kalen DeBoer is a great offensive mind that can figure out how to get his star talent the football. But Ryan Williams also has to do some things as well. He can't just rely on screen passes and quick passes to make plays. He has to find ways to create separation against this Georgia defense. And how he's going to do that is route running, being consistent, and paying attention to details. I think that right now there are questions about, can he be that guy consistently? And those are valid concerns and valid questions. Last year, there were a couple games where he looked really good. There were a bunch of games where you didn't really know if he was on the field or you just were unimpressed with his performance. So this is a big opportunity for him to once again show that, hey, I am a problem for the Georgia Bulldogs and I can be a consistent threat for this team. And if you're this defense, you better buckle up, because if you struggled with Florida State, you are going to have a long day against Georgia. Georgia is way more talented at skill positions than Florida State is, and they are going to present a lot of different challenges and a lot of different obstacles that Alabama has not seen. Stopping Zachariah Branch is the toughest test that they'll face so far this year. Now, there was speed on Florida State's team, but Zachariah Branch is a problem. And you also have to worry about him as a returner. That's another obstacle that Alabama has to worry about. Now, the big key is, can you make Gunnar Stockton so uncomfortable that he's going to make poor decisions and give you the football back? Tennessee had opportunities to turn the ball over early against Gunnar Stockton and Georgia. If Alabama can create those turnovers early, they're going to get more opportunities. They're going to get the ball back and they're going to have chances to put points on the board early and often. That is a big key. You also have to keep things in front of. Zachariah Branch is a nightmare to stop. And right now, Mike Bobo has done a pretty good job of getting him the football and getting him involved. But he's not the only guy you have to worry about. You have to worry about Colby Young. You have to worry about Noah Thomas. There are so many guys that you have to defend, and it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be a simple solution. You just can't walk onto the field and expect, hey, we're going to have success. Georgia is too good to let that happen. And then you also have to figure out, how are we going to block this defense? How are you going to make sure that Ty Simpson has the comfort? Because this is a defense that is hungry for success. That being said, Georgia's got to figure out, how do we not give up explosive plays? Because Tennessee had a number of big plays, and you have explosive players in Bernard and Williams that can do what Brazzell and that Tennessee offense did to you. That is something that Kirby Smart has been trying to figure out for the last couple of weeks, and we're going to see how well it works for them. We're going to see how easy it is for them to get back on track. Or is it going to be another long game where Alabama's just putting up points? That's a big question. But it's also an exciting opportunity for the teams that are playing in this game and the guys that are going to be able to step up in that way. Georgia being at home, to me, though, is the big difference here. I think that I have a lot of questions still about Alabama. Just because they beat up on bad competition doesn't mean they're all of a sudden a different team. This is still the same team that lost to Florida State. The problem is that Georgia doesn't look invincible either. So that's why this game the line is 3 points. I do think that Georgia is going to win. I think, again, the last couple of weeks haven't really done anything to change my perception of Alabama. I've seen Georgia do it. I've seen Georgia do the things that I expect them to do, and also what they need to do to be a contender. Alabama has not done that yet. If Ryan Williams can be consistent, that's going to be a good step in the right direction. But I think that the Bulldogs are just the better team right now, and Alabama is just not going to have what it takes to be able to compete in this one and win this game. UMass at Missouri. We don't really have to talk about who's going to win because Missouri is clearly going to win. This is just going to be an interesting one to see how many points Missouri puts up. Are they going to have the hangover game after beating South Carolina, or are they going to absolutely take it to UMass and get their starters out by halftime? That is a big question I have for that one there. Washington State at Colorado State. Colorado State maybe has a new quarterback going in. Jackson Bruzeau took over for Braden Fowler Nicolosi last week, and it showed some signs of excitement. They came up short ultimately against UTSA, but at least the offense showed some signs of light. Ziva Eckhouse has been the bright spot for Washington State's offense. He's back in the starting lineup. Who knows if that's going to continue, but he is, I think, the best option that they have. I'm going to go with Colorado State in this one. Washington State has so many issues to figure out, and I think the Rams are going to get back on track after losing last week. San Jose State at Stanford. Stanford is a 2.5-point favorite. I think that the Spartans have been very disappointing, and Stanford somehow beat Boston College, and that was really interesting. So I'm going to give Stanford the benefit of the doubt here. I think that they're going to take care of business there. App State at Boise State. Boise State is a 16.5-point favorite and a team that is going to be really interesting to watch. The opportunity for them to make the college football playoff might be gone, but they're still going to compete like they have that opportunity still in front of them. They still have the chance to make a run here, and they're playing at home against an App State team that could score some points, but if Boise State is locked and loaded, there shouldn't be too many concerns. I'm going with the Broncos here, but App State could make this thing interesting. Kentucky at South Carolina. South Carolina is a 6.5-point favorite, which is kind of surprising, but also with how much they struggled in recent weeks offensively, not at the same time. I do think that Lenore Suller's performance last week gives me reason to believe that they're going to win this one comfortably. I don't think that Kentucky can hang with South Carolina, and especially if South Carolina's defense is being disruptive, the Gamecocks should have no problem winning that one. Louisiana Tech, big win over Southern Miss last week. They're off to a great start. Sonny Cumbie deserves a lot of credit for their success. They go on the road to face a UTEP team that is much better than their record indicates. I think I'm going to go with Louisiana Tech still, but I think this one is going to be a close one. And then finally, BYU at Colorado. BYU is a 6.5-point favorite on the road. Even though they struggled finishing drives against ECU, they did find ways to make explosive plays and eventually pull away from the Pirates. I think that BYU does get the job done, and it's just going to come down to the play of Bear Bachmeier. Man, this one honestly is tough because Colorado has not been overly impressive, but the fact that this is at home, you're playing a true freshman quarterback, I might lean Colorado, actually. I think that this is an interesting game. This is going to be a fun one to watch. BYU has been good. As long as they can be physical and run the football, they should be fine. This one feels more like a toss-up, honestly. Even though BYU is favored by 6.5, this is a tough one to pick. I don't know. Maybe I'll let all of you decide what this one actually is going to be. This one, it could be a late night matchup that's back and forth. That's going to be an electric atmosphere. Colorado's fans show out quite a bit, and that's a fun way to kind of wrap up the weekend. This is going to be fun. Week 5 is going to be electric. Let me know your predictions in the comments below, and as always, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you in the next one.